Sounds like he couldn't even tell if it had any legs or anything, almost like it was dragging itself. That's the way I took that. Gray skin, no mouth or nose, and just these dark eye sockets. No actual eyes that he could see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's his version of what he described sounds very crawlerish to me, and literally it was crawling, but he didn't see legs or anything. It almost looked like it was missing the lower half of its torso.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
On this episode of Into the Fray, I welcome Brandon right on with me, and he is of the Tinfoil Tales Podcast, and you have heard Brandon on before. He was on episode 451. I titled that so creatively, Indiana Dogman, where he shared his 2007 road sighting that was of a dogman type, dogman-like creature. Let's just say that, Brandon, right? Because there's so many other things going on with that make it so very odd. But Brandon, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So this time, and we're probably not going to rehash that road sighting because of the fact that you've already done that on the show, but what we are going to cover is the Mississinewa Triangle, and this is in your home state of Indiana. And everybody loves triangles because a lot of weird shisa goes down in said triangles. And this one is no exception. And this is an upcoming documentary produced by yourself. And I have to say, I've seen the whole thing already. I loved it. I enjoyed it. There was, as everyone can tell, here is my page full of notes. So, yeah, there are no shortage of topics to cover as far as this documentary goes. But it's very cool, of course, to not only talk about an upcoming documentary, and we'll talk about possibilities of where to see this. You may not know that yet, but just for the verbiage of what we're talking about now, and to also actually be able to see these places, because I know people like to hear about them, but it's always nice to actually be taken on a little journey and go to the places that these events have occurred. Now, let's start off with the most basic question, Brandon, and that is, now this is in the state of Indiana, so what are the points that make up the triangle?
It was kind of just one of those things where I talked to someone and they had an encounter, so I kind of like put it on a map, and then I put my own encounter, and then someone else had an encounter. So to be 100% honest, it's probably not exactly the same size of a triangle that it is, because the more I've looked into it, the further out it's been getting. But the first few people that I had spoken with, like, it kind of made sense because it almost went like a straight line, like from my encounter to someone else. And then like it followed the path down to some of these locations and everything. So I drew a line that way. I talked to someone from a different town and it went up to this one. So I was like, well, if you go from here to here to here, pretty much makes a triangle. But I know it's a trendy term in the paranormal field for people to use that term because it's just, like I said, it's one of those things, just trying to get people to actually pay attention to some of the weird things that go on around here. So is it necessarily a complete triangle? I'm sure there's probably more people that'll want to argue that it's not just a triangle, but it works.
No, it does work. And one of the places that you bring up is the city of Peru. And this is a place that has burial grounds from the Miami Indians, right? So anytime we're talking about sites like that, you might have weird things going on, but also something that's just innately probably a little bit creepy to some people is a circus. You talk about circus, you talk about clowns and things. Peru is the circus capital of the world, which I was not expecting when I watched the doc. I'm like, that's a different kind of a moniker to have. But this location had a flood in 1911 that really caused issues there, right?
Yeah, basically where the flood happened is actually where the original Miami trading village used to be before the circus. And that whole area was eventually wiped out by the army in 1812. But that was like one of their meeting grounds for the other tribes. So there was the Delaware Indians, there was the Potawatomi. They all kind of got together in this central location where the Mississinewa River and the Wabash River meet. And for some reason, that is what Benjamin Wallace, who was the guy that brought the circuses around here, he bought all that land, and that's where he started to store all of the circus stuff for his thing. Because Barnum and Bailey and some of the other like bigger name Ringling, like they all used to store all their stuff here in the winter. And in 1911, a flood came and wiped out so much of the equipment, killed a lot of the animals. I'm pretty sure some of the actual like workers that stayed there maybe had drowned. I don't remember the exact number. I think it was like, depends on where you look at. There was like 11 people, and some said 30 people. So it's been 100 actually drowned. But that actually did a lot of damage there. But I thought it was strange that they chose that spot where the Miami had chose to be like their main hub as a place to build the Circus Hall of Fame. And then that's where, like I said, all these animals and all this other stuff happened there. So there's been a lot of tragic stuff that's happened in that location.
One of the other things that you uncovered in this area and that there are reports of is the reports of large canines. And in particular, where they are actually chasing vehicles and keeping up with said vehicles. So I was wondering, with any of the reports that you found in researching for your doc, how far or in relation to your own experience were some of these or any of these?
Just a few miles.
Whoa.
Pretty much everything that happens within, because about 2 miles north of Peru is where mine happened. A lot of the stuff that happened along the river is right on the outskirts of town. And then just south of Peru, like a couple miles, is where a lot of these other sightings have happened. So everything within like a 10-mile radius has had multiple Bigfoot, Dogman, all sorts of weird sightings.
Yeah, and it's important to mention that there are a couple of different rivers that also flow in that area. So you also have that whole water and the paranormal aspect to things as well. And of course, cryptids following rivers. If, you know, they pop in and out of this world and still need to follow rivers, I guess that's where they would go.
Yeah, there's the Eel River, there's the Wabash River, and the Mississinewa River, and then a lot of little tributaries that kind of flow through here too. But those are the main 3 rivers right in this central area.
So is that what made you want to do the documentary? Is after you had your experience and then you just, I mean, obviously you're doing the show, you're doing your podcast and you're talking to folks and you're going, you know, I just feel like I want to document everything in this area. Or was it in fact, you just saw how close everything was in succession and decided that was the catalyst for doing this?
It was kind of one of those things where after doing this and finding out other people had had all these experiences, when I started to just kind of look around and seeing how many people had the same sort of encounters, I was just like, I could do an episode on it. And then I was like, well, who's really going to listen to the podcast? I was like, maybe a video documenting this stuff would actually draw more attention to it. So I just kind of, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I was like, I'm going to attempt to make a documentary. I've never made anything like this before, but that's just kind of how I went about it. I didn't know anything about doing a podcast either, and I just jumped right into it. So,
well, you did a great job for your first crack at a doc. You did very well. It holds your attention, and it's so cool. Like I said, it's so different to versus just hearing someone talk on a podcast. As you say, you could have just done an episode or 2 or a series, but to actually take folks there and you get to see the locations, it helps. It really does. It adds context to things. All right. This is another tragic area. It's called the Okefenokee area, and there's been murders there. There was a mushroom hunter, right, that something occurred and a body was found.
Back in, I think it was 2018, a guy was murdered for about $56, I think it was what he had on him. I'm sure there was more to it than that, but he was taken out there and they basically beat him to death and left him out there, and a mushroom hunter found him. There's also stories back from, I think, the 60s or 70s. There's a little girl named Stephanie, and people go out there and leave tributes to her. I went out there around Christmas time and someone left her a present. I've never found any evidence of a little girl named Stephanie being murdered out there. That's just one of the local legends. But there's also stories of they uncovered bodies from out there, which this did used to be part of the burial grounds for the Miami. Just right down the street is the actual official burial grounds now. But that whole area used to be their burial ground. And now it's blocked off and you're not even supposed to be back there. Which, for filming purposes, I was not back there.
So how close is that to that? You mentioned the 7 pillars, and that's privately owned, right? Is that basically that very same area?
It's literally just a stone's throw away, right along the river. Okefenokee runs along the river, and 7 Pillars is right along the river. It's, like I said, it's all within less than a mile of each other. But 7 Pillars is owned by the Miami Indians now.
Oh, it is. Okay. So that part is not privately owned. Well, I guess technically it is then.
Yeah,
but
Okefenokee's called a Francis Slocum State Park, or not state park, but state wildlife area, I think it is. But they barricaded it off after the murder. So you're only allowed to be out there on horseback, and you have to stay on the main trails. The main trail takes you to a circle, which we didn't get to in the documentary, but the circle is where a lot of the satanic ritual stuff happens, which we didn't focus a whole lot on that in the documentary, but back in the 80s and stuff, there's a lot of sacrificial animal stuff going on out there. A lot of people used to go back there and party. That whole area is just weird. Anyone that's ever went out there has had some sort of experience, but I've went out there and camped, and I never had anything weird happen to me, which is strange because it's like the people that go out looking for it don't usually find it, but then the ones that aren't interested in it have weird things happen to them.
Well, yeah, because you also, in the Okefenokee area, you talked to a guy named Will Smith. Not that Will Smith, everyone. He found animals that had been ripped up, and then also a lot of trees that had been placed in what looked like very intentional arches. So for marking purposes, possibly.
I actually went out there after I spoke with him, and I did find the trees. They're still somewhat bent over. And that is where we found those tracks of our own on the main path that look like human tracks, but they obviously it's almost primate-ish, because where the big toe would be, it's almost like they had an opposable thumb for a big toe. Make a whole lot of sense as to why a ape would be walking around, and it didn't look like the typical Bigfoot track. And some were like large dog tracks. So I don't know. That was weird. That's the one thing that we did come across. There's even other tracks that I didn't even put in the documentary that we came across, because it's hard to tell what they actually were. And I only wanted to present stuff that I didn't want people to interpret things a different way. This is what we have. This is what I can verify is here. And those tracks, they looked like a little person, which he even mentioned seeing like a little track. So I don't know. I don't know whose kids would be running around out there.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the kind of area that you would go, hey, let's go down here and take our shoes off and run around. That would, not impossible, right? But a little bit strange. And just outside of that, and I appreciate that you did try to look for records of Stephanie, and you admit I did not find any. Whatever, people want to take away from that, they can. But even the locals just constantly talk, it sounds like, that it's just known that is a very, very haunted area, period.
I have multiple people that have reached out to me that did not want to be on the documentary. They didn't want to be interviewed or anything about it, but they've told me the experiences they've had out there. A lot of people report seeing a lady in white and a little girl with the lady in white, which sounds kind of cliche because you always hear stories about people in white. But the one guy, who told me this, he actually worked for the highway department, and he was plowing snow, which I relate to that because that's what I used to do. And he was going down the main road, which would be 124, and then he saw a little girl out there by herself, which he thought was strange. In the middle of a snowstorm, there's a little girl out there. And then when he came back by, if I remember, there's been several, like I said, several people, but if I remember it right, he said he saw her now with an adult lady, and they looked like they were dressed in like just white, old-timey clothing, but they were walking down that path down like towards Okefenokee, which that's just a gravel road that goes back like 2 miles, and it turns into that circle, and then it's a dead end. Why would anyone be walking that in the middle of the night in a dress during the snow?
That would be very creepy to see. Very.
And then someone else had told me that they saw something similar, not on the actual gravel part, but if you go up here, it has like a 90-degree turn, and then there's the old Francis Slocum horse trails. When he went around that curve, he saw someone walking in the street dressed in old-timey clothing. Now, could there have been someone doing some sort of reenactment out at the old horse camp stuff? Possibly, but that's weird to be doing that in the middle of the night. So a lot of this stuff happens at like random hours. And then this didn't actually make the documentary, but someone had reported seeing a flying humanoid out in that area. I wanted to interview him. I might do it for an episode sometime, but he said he saw a gargoyle. It was eating roadkill along the side of the road on that, like right before you get out towards Okefenokee. When the lights hit it, it looked up from the roadkill and then opened up its wings and shot up in the air. Now, this is funny because people have talked about seeing flying humanoids out there as well, and they do the same thing. They open up. One lady said she saw a guy walking with a trench coat in the middle of the road, and ended up not being a trench coat. He opens it up and it was wings, and he just levitates up and then flies over. Someone else saw someone flying, levitating up off the ground and flew over the trees, but they never use the wings. They have wings, but they never flap. Even the guy that saw the gargoyle said the same thing. The wings just open and they just shoot in the air. So what's the point of having wings if you can just levitate?
That's an interesting detail. Have you ever heard of anything like that before? I don't think I have.
Mothman?
I mean,
I don't know. I don't know if anyone's ever mentioned Mothman flapping wings, but...
Yeah, that's true. But to specifically mention that they saw wings, but then they just look like they weren't functioning, that is so strange.
Yeah. So that's just part of it. Again, the little stuff that we talked about, like the little footprints, the Miami had their own stories of little people. And there's a map that one of the local guys that I'd interviewed, he's done a lot of research around here too. And he claims that there's been lots of stories of little people, like little Native American looking people, but there's also been stories of puckwudgies. Which if you follow the river, not too far from here I think it's called Mound State Park. It's down in Anderson. And there's all sorts of sightings of puckwudgie activity down there and little people sightings. And obviously mounds, because it used to be the burial mounds of the Delaware Indians.
I think I would like to see one of the little people reports. Sometimes they have clothes, sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I would like to see something like that, unless it's just you in the middle of nowhere and it's a whole group of them, especially maybe not. But I don't know. That's on I think I would like to see that list.
Someone had told me that they were walking with their mother and she saw a Native American man come up from behind them. And then she said something to him. So the son turned around and he didn't see anything. And he asked his mom who she was talking to. And she looked at him and she looked back and the Native American man was gone. So I don't know if that's a spirit or again, because this whole area is all Native American lands from 200 years ago.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, who knows what it could be? Especially, okay, in this case, John Fike of Myths, Monsters, and Mullets podcast, he got very emotional recounting what he experienced. I believe it was he and his wife, right? Mm-hmm. And essentially, it sounds like a pale crawler situation. And he actually has pictures of when he drove by this thing and it actually reached out for the vehicle. And you could just tell that man saw what he says he saw. Now, who knows what it is? I'm sure he doesn't even want to, you can speculate, but he admits, like, who knows what the hell that was. But you could tell that really bothered him.
That was recent when we filmed that. We filmed it in January of 25, and he had just saw it, I think, at the beginning of December of 24. So it'd been less than a month, a little over a month. So that was really recent for him. So you could still see how much it affected him. And at the time, like, the location where he told me, it's not necessarily in the same, like, area here, but he's further away, but it was along the Mississinewa River. He was like less than a half a mile from the river, but he was more towards Muncie. But if you follow that river, it goes all the way down to Muncie. And again, like I said, I think it's not so much just this central area, it's literally the rivers themselves. Like, there's something along the rivers that do this.
Yeah, he said it had the upper half of a man. It was essentially moving on its knuckles, which is a very creepy detail. Sounds like he couldn't even tell if it had any legs or anything, almost like it was dragging itself. That's the way I took that. Gray skin, no mouth or nose, and just these dark eye sockets. No actual eyes that he could see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's... his version of what he described sounds very crawlerish to me, and literally it was crawling, but he didn't see legs or anything. It almost looked like it was missing the lower half of its torso.
That's way worse. That is way, way freaking worse, right, Brandon? No, thank you. Also, you had an interview with someone that was fishing with his dog down by the river, and then you actually show his dog prints next to these other prints that he found. And the size difference is pretty stunning.
Yeah, that happened, ironically, a month before someone reported seeing a Bigfoot in the same spot. So I am part of, like, I get on the Bigfoot mapping project and I find like these things of where it was here. This happened, I think it was in the end of July of 2021 or 2022. And then on the Bigfoot mapping project, someone said they saw a 7 or 8 foot tall Bigfoot walk across the road, and it just so happened to be right in the same location. So I'm wondering if they saw a Bigfoot or if they actually saw whatever bipedal canine this was, because again, the average person's not going to think of a 7 foot, 8 foot tall dog man walking across the road. They're going to think of a Bigfoot unless they're familiar with this type of stuff.
That is very true. That's very true, especially if you don't really get the enough light or a profile of it to see, oh, there's backwards legs and all of these, the long snout and all of these things that can stick out about a dog man. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, the dog print of his dog looks tiny compared to the one that he found and the couple that he found, because his dog is a 70-pound husky. So it's already got a big foot. And then you see the size of the foot next, like the track next to it. That's even if it was just a dog, that's a huge dog.
Massive. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely was. That's what's so cool about this doc is there's actually, you show as much evidence as the witnesses allowing you to show. You show all of that, including John's car with the hand swipe down with and what I forgot to mention about John's, the pale, we'll just call it a pale crawler just so everybody realizes what we're referencing, is the fingers were so wide apart. This wasn't just like somebody's normal hand going down a car if you were going to try to recreate that, right? It was a little bit further than that.
Yeah, there's like a 7-inch gap between fingers stretched out, which I have huge hands and I can't stretch that far out.
Right. Yeah. That one's a big bag of nope. No, thank you. Bigfoot tracks. You interview a father and a son. They've got their own Bigfoot tracks out there. And also, of course, lots of aerial phenomena in the area. You've got actual crafts and orbs, and you actually have seen orbs in the sky.
even out back behind our house, and I have video of the ones in the front of the house, which is funny because I can watch them on my phone, but the moment I try and send them to someone or upload them to the computer, you can't see them.
Hmm.
And I don't understand why, but like you can literally see it on my iPhone. And I've showed people, they've watched it, and I will text that video to them, and they don't appear in that video. Because I was going to include those in the documentary because we thought it was Starlink, but they weren't moving like Starlink would have been moving. Because we've seen Starlink before, and this was when we first moved out here, and I got all excited thinking there was UFOs, and I realized it was Starlink. But this wasn't what Starlink was. And then back in 2023, there was an orange orb floating out in the field behind our house. And I yelled for my wife and son to come look at it. So we were all standing there, and for some reason, and I've been critical of people for never filming anything, and I think that's probably why I am more prone to do it these days. I never thought about recording it, and we watched it, and it just sat in the same spot and hovered for a few minutes, and then it lifted up in the air and then kind of moved off to the right-hand side and then just disappeared. I thought it could have been a flare, but flares would go down, not move up. That was the only thing that I thought was strange about it, because it did look like a flare, and a lot of people that see these orange orbs around here, they claim they're flares. I don't think everything is a flare. Obviously, we are close to a military base, but it's not an active base anymore. Like, it's decommissioned, and it's just like a refueling station. They don't have training going on, but sometimes they claim that up in Fort Wayne, they have fighter pilots come out there and do training. I don't know if that's can explain everything that people are seeing, but I do know these orange orbs themselves, I've seen them move in patterns that wouldn't be a flare.
So the one in your backyard, how far away would you say? It's hard to guess, but just a guess. Is it like airline cruising speed or closer or further?
The way this looked, I thought it would have been higher up in the air, but depending on how close it actually was, I couldn't tell you. Like, it was just, it looked like a fireball. Like, that's the best way I could describe, like a ball of fire in the sky, and then it just kind of moved and then disappeared.
Have you ever tried to go out and put the intention out there that you want to see something, essentially, for lack of a better term, CE5 it?
Not really. I've said things and I've tried to make things happen, but nothing's happened. And I'm leery about doing that here just because as we've talked before on that previous, we have a lot of weird stuff that goes on in my own house. So I try not to do things too close from home.
I understand that. I do understand that. Because even the last time we talked, there was some weird stuff that happened in your recording studio, I recall. So don't need to poke the bear.
Yeah, I even have a new studio now, and there's still some random things that happen here. I was editing audio the other day, and it reminded me because when I was recording an interview with someone, my door opened up by itself. I was like, well, I must not have shut it all the way, but it's still just creepy when you're sitting out here in the middle of the night in the dark, and then all of a sudden your door just opens up by itself.
I would imagine. Yes. Uh-huh. Do you hear knocks and thumps and bumps and things like that? Any shadows out of the corner of your eye?
I hear random noises and I just chalk it up to probably something outside. I don't want to accept that there's probably something creepy creeping around. I just say it's some sort of critter.
Once you look into the abyss, right, Brandon?
Yeah.
You're like, I've had enough. And that's just to say, I hope everyone goes back and listens to 451 if you haven't heard Brandon's telling of that. And we were lucky enough to have Brandon come out while we were in Indiana filming for On the Trail UFOs. We were also filming for some Dogman stuff. So he retold it then too. So, and thanks again for doing that, Brandon.
No problem.
Okay. I also wanted to bring up the battlegrounds area because, and this might tie into, and you say you didn't touch on it a whole lot and you didn't, but it was worth mentioning. So you did. Is kind of this dark ritual side of things, and the fact that on the battlegrounds there are black robe figures, and they don't seem to be residual in nature because they reacted to one of the people that you talked to, their headlights. When the headlights fell upon these black figures, these figures reacted.
Yeah. This is one of those stories that other people have also told the same thing. So it's like, are people seeing the same situation? Like, is it the same entities, or are these real people, or are these real, like, actual rituals going on? Someone said that they were out there before and they were chased out on foot by these robed figures. That makes me think it's actual humans out there doing some sort of shady, creepy, whatever they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Other people have said that they've seen like the remnants of sacrificial ceremonies. Like they've seen like blood on the ground. They've seen like the random circles and like pentagrams drawn out there. I don't know why they chose that area other than the fact that this is where some of the villages were and everyone was burned alive and burnt, thrown in the rivers. That's the thing. Like when the army came through, they set the villages on fire and they tossed a lot of the bodies over in the river.
Mm.
So that's just bad juju, in my opinion, because you already have all the death. You're throwing it in the water. We know that water can be a conduit for energy. Like there's just so much activity in these specific areas. So who knows what's really going on? But a lot of people have also reported seeing, again, people doing rituals out there. They've seen the fires. They've all the remnants. They've seen the robes. So people are going out there and they're conjuring up stuff too, or attempting to. You don't know what you're opening up when you start doing stuff like that.
I think it'd be way worse to run into the actual living, breathing people doing that dark shaisa versus the spirits of past people doing said shaisa. I think that's way worse, way more dangerous. Living people are way scarier than most of the things that we're talking about today. Not all of them, like the pale crawler, that's on the no list. But yeah, that can get very dangerous very quickly.
I've told that to people too, and they said, you have no problem running out in the woods and going after monsters. I was like, the real monsters are the humans you're going to encounter.
That's right.
I was like, I'm more afraid of running into some crazy person out in the woods than I am a Bigfoot coming and ripping me apart.
Yeah.
I was like, the likelihood is someone out there doing some weird, shady stuff out in the woods and don't want anyone to find them.
Yeah. And that happens over and over, and that's why true crime podcasts are so very popular, because we're the scariest thing out there, period, for the most part. All right, last but not least, you guys were out kind of on this night investigation and, kind of trying to close things up, and then you did bring up the fact that, and this is something that's come up in other docs and in other podcasts, and people have heard this sound in the woods, and that is a metallic sound that just sounds like there's no way that should be happening. Why is a metallic sound being heard?
I was out filming on that bridge, and I was trying to get like B-roll footage to start putting things together. As I was walking back, it sounded like someone had took like a stick or something and kind of drug it across the guardrail. Like you can tell the sound of metal being scratched. So I actually went around. I looked. There was no tree that could have like brushed against. There was nothing around. So I don't know what would have made that metal. And there's no houses or anyone else out in this area. It's in the middle of BFE. And I couldn't recreate that noise. But when I used the guardrail, it was literally the guardrail making that noise. But I can't explain how the guardrail was being scratched across. That's why I wanted to go back out there, because it felt like there was something wanting my attention. So 2 days later, we went back out. And then more crazy stuff happened.
So when you're out there getting the B-roll and you hear this sound and then you figure out where the sound came from, what's the distance there? How far is that guardrail from where you were standing when you were getting that B-roll?
A few feet. I was just walking across the bridge when I heard the noise. It was right behind me.
Okay. So what are...
it was during the day, and I was out there by myself, and this is actually kind of funny. I was being watched further down the road by DNR, and he started to creep up on me. So I was actually going to ask if he wanted to be in the documentary, but he just drove past me and like waved and then kept driving. So he didn't stop. And then a few minutes later, I was out in that area, and then that's when I heard the noise. So he was the only person that I had seen the entire couple of hours that I was out there.
How long had he been watching you before he drove by and waved?
Probably a couple minutes, because I didn't even notice him until I just seen a black vehicle just parked further down the road, just sitting there. I don't know if he was just trying to see what I was out there doing or what, but
I mean, would it have been obvious what you were doing? I mean, were you holding, a couple cameras up and this and that?
Yeah, I had my camera in my hand and I was recording stuff or whatever, so it's not like I was doing anything illegal.
Right.
But
so what is some of the other crazy stuff that went on, if you wanted to share that?
Well, I think you can vaguely hear what the other guy was out there talking about when we were like recording at night. He'd mentioned that on that bridge years back, they were driving across, and conveniently, like, people dressed in costumes, black robed costumes, jumped out in front of them. One had a creepy clown mask on and something else, and they tried to stop them. And they just drove, nothing happened with that, but people were just go out there and screw around with people. So this whole area is called Hobbit Land. The reason it's called Hobbit Land is because, again, the small people sightings, like the little humanoids that people see out there. Now, people for years back, even the 70s, it was referred to as Hobbit Land. And a lot of people used to go out there and do things that they couldn't do legally out of this middle of nowhere. So that was the roads that people would drive on, the back roads to have their little fun or whatever they were doing. And it's not too far off the battlegrounds. It's right along the river. And then there's just so many people have reported seeing little people out there. So that's why we went out to that spot, because I'm like, well, if this is puckwudgies, these are little people, what was making that noise? I wanted to go out there. And that's, like I said, he'd mentioned telling us about these masked people jumping out and trying to scare them. Which, again, for anyone listening, don't do that. Yeah. You might get ran over. You might get shot. You don't know what's going to happen. Like when people jump out dressed as Bigfoot years back and the guy got killed because he ran out in front of a car.
Yeah.
I guess my brain doesn't process why they think that's a good idea.
I don't either. I'm not sure either. But yeah, don't do that. You don't know how people are going to react. So if you were, from everything that we've talked about so far, if you would say, I need to put my money on a certain location if I want something to happen, something paranormal, as best you could tell, would it be Hobbit Land, or would you go back to some of the areas where all these upright canines, where you had your own sighting, or is it all just equally as active from what you can tell?
For me, the most activity that we had communication-wise was out at Hobbit Land for paranormal stuff. We went out to Okefenokee several different times. I have so much footage that never got used because nothing happened, and I didn't want to just put in a bunch of stuff of nothing. And if there wasn't anything that I felt like was interesting to me, I didn't want to bore someone else with it. So there's so much unused material that we have because nothing was going on. Now, obviously, maybe there was stuff going on. We just didn't catch it. But like I said, when it comes to Okefenokee, everyone says that is one of the most haunted places, but I've personally never had anything happen to me there.
Yeah, that Hobbit Land area is creepy. Very creepy. Even during the day, as you said, you were out there. It has this vibe to it.
Yeah, it's just a bridge in the middle of nowhere. People have spray painted, don't trust the Hobbit, or the Hobbit lies, or something on the bridge. It's been graffitied. There was a shopping cart on the side of down in the creek. Who brought a shopping cart out there and just threw it over there? Yeah. It's just random stuff. But the thing out there, and I don't know how well you were able to see it in the documentary, but when we were out there, and Sean had noticed something in the distance, and it was a light. And I couldn't tell if it was like a reflection, and I thought maybe it was like the reflection from the truck that was parked down there, but obviously it wasn't. It was in the middle of the road. And it's hard to see in the film, but you can kind of see it. And as we start to walk to it, you can tell it's kind of moving. And then it just kind of like disappears. That freaked me out because I thought it was a person out there with like, it was almost like a greenish light. So that's not like a normal colored light you would see. Like you would think you'd see like a yellow light or even somehow like a flashlight, like a light. But this was like a green color. So I thought maybe it was like a reflection from a sign, but there is no signs out there. So I don't know what that could have been. We drove down there to try and debunk it later, and we couldn't because there's nothing there, which is vaguely in the same area as to where he said he'd saw those years ago, where he'd seen this thing come out from behind a tree. This is all in that same little area. And after we started following the light is when we started getting the communication. Like we had the spirit box out there with us. We had the K2 meter. And you can hear my son, which I'm that dad that brought my 12-year-old, 13-year-old out with me because he wanted to go. And he's got a hold of my spirit or the K2 meter. And you can hear him, which I didn't even realize it because I didn't hear him. I was too focused on what was going on in front of me with the light. He's saying that the lights on that meter were going off as we were walking, but I didn't realize that until afterwards. And then once we stopped, he brings it up again that the meters are going off. And that's how we started to pay attention to that. And that's when the thing started to respond to us. But you can also hear the responses on the spirit box that coincide with what's going on the K2 meter. And I'm very skeptical of stuff like that, but it's too much of a coincidence for something to say words and make answers that match up to questions or references, and also make things light up when you're asking it to do that.
Yeah, most people know I'm not super excited about EVPs either, unless they do, as you say, directly correlate to what is going on or what is being said. And actually, at one point, it does seem like you're kind of like, hey, do you want us to stay? Do you want us to go? And there is some reaction and interaction there. And then at one point, it almost sounds like it says bye or goodbye on the spirit box. So it's of interest at the very least.
Yeah. Like I said, when it comes to spirit boxes and stuff like that, I understand it's picking up frequencies by going through the signals. So you interpret what you hear and doesn't necessarily mean that's what it is. But at the same time, it's creepy when it answers you in something or responds to you. Because if you think about the signals of how fast it's going by, how did it make that word at that exact time?
Right. Yeah, that's when it's cool to actually be there. And I'm sure that everyone had the chicken skin going on, right? Like, oh, that was a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
Well, Brandon, as much as you can, and I know that you don't know everywhere that it's going to be at this moment. I know a little bit about what Seth goes through to get things distributed, and it's not the easiest thing. But as of right now, what is the plan for distribution and how people will be able to see this?
Originally, it was supposed to be out on all the streaming platforms, but I have not been able to get it picked up for distribution. So it's still kind of just sitting in limbo, waiting to be quality controlled, and it's been 2 months. So I don't know if that's ever going to get picked up. I know the things that people used to use to get things picked up with has been changed here recently. And I've actually talked to a few studios. I've had offers to have them, but they wanted 100% creative control. They wanted to be able to do what they want. I was like, no, I'm not giving that up. So I turned that one down. I have another offer, but they wanted me to pay them $5,500 up front. And then they wanted the first $15,000 before I'd ever see anything. I was like, no, I'm not doing that either. So as of right now, it's set up for, I guess, YouTube, but I had to create a different YouTube channel. So it's Tinfoil Tales Films is where I have it set up to be launched on June 12th.
June 12th. Excellent. And then, of course, if anyone wants to just, you can type in the Mississinewa Triangle. It is spelled exactly how you say it, Mississinewa Triangle. You can search it that way, but it's probably easier just to go to the Tinfoil Tales Films YouTube channel than to try to spell it. I understand. So, well, Brandon, also mentioned your podcast as well, and any of the socials that people can find you on that you wanted to shout out.
You can find Tinfoil Tales Podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts at. So Apple, Spotify. There is a YouTube channel. It's, again, just Tinfoil Tales. You can find me on any of the social medias. Just look up Tinfoil Tales. Make sure you do find the correct one, because apparently there is a Australian version of Tinfoil Tales. That is I do want to add this in there because the reason you and I got connected years ago was because of a friend I have. His name's Greg, and he recently passed away. So I want to say thanks to Greg for having you and I get connected, because he was the one that originally reached out to me to try and reach out to you a couple of years ago. But he sadly passed away last week. So, yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I know he'd met you before at one of the conventions or whatever. He had a photograph with you at some point. I think it was like over in Ohio when the All-Town
Monster Fest.
Yeah.
Well,
but now he recently just passed away tragically. So.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry to hear that.
But,
I think I remember him bringing that up when we met at Monster Fest about, I'm the one that got you and Brandon. Yeah, I do recall that. A very nice man. That's sad to hear.
Yeah, I don't like it ending on a sad note, but I was in the middle of recording someone last week when I found out about it.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things, like I went to a viewing and everything, but I felt like he made the connection for you and I to get together. So I just wanted to kind of honor him. And
Yeah, he sure did. Well, rest in peace to Greg. Super nice guy. Yeah, was he in, I'm trying to recall, was he in, I mean, he was obviously closer to you than he was to us in Ohio, where he met us at Monster Fest, right?
Yeah, he lived about 50 minutes north of where I live. There is one other thing that we can end on a positive. Not too many people know this, because it's not like, I'm not much of a boaster or anything, but this is actually kind of an interesting thing. You know the movie that came out recently with Emma Stone where she's bald? Like they shaved her head because they thought she was an alien.
I've seen the promo photos, but I don't know much about that film or what's doing with that.
It's called Begonia. It came out. It's on Netflix right now. It came out last year. It was nominated for Academy Award. You can actually hear me in that movie.
Really?
When he's riding his bicycle to work, he's listening to my podcast. Yeah, my name and podcast are in the ending credits.
That is so cool. Was there a certain nod to a certain episode or anything, or?
They licensed episode 99 from me.
What episode is that? What were you discussing in episode 99?
The cover-up of alien craft and technologies, which goes along with what the movie is.
Yeah. Very cool.
They reached out to me a couple of years ago, and it literally took almost a year before it to ever come out after they reached out to me. But they took the director, apparently, of all people. I don't know how he found my podcast, but he told them that he wanted the audio from that episode. So the studio contacted me, and I thought it was a scam at first.
I bet.
But come to find out it was actually a real thing. And then sure enough, at the end of the movie, you see my name and the podcast name in it.
That is very cool. Well, you do have that nice low baritone voice, for traditional radio and podcast. So that's awesome.
Everyone tells me I have a radio voice. I was like, okay.
You definitely do. See, and I'm even trying to go lower as I talk. So yeah, I mean, that's why traditionally, there was no women in radio back in the day. It was, Orson Welles and all these people with these beautiful low voices, so, and I think still to this day, even myself, I prefer to listen to a man speaking on podcast. And that's crazy. Coming from me, probably. People are like, what are you doing? Why would you even say that out loud? But damn it, that is the truth. So there you go. Yeah, that is a cool little tidbit, Brandon. Very cool. I have to look for that.
The only reason I brought that up again is because Greg kept telling me I don't talk about stuff like that enough. So I said from now on, I'll mention it just for, he kept giving me crap for never bringing stuff up like that. I was like, I'm a humble type of a person. I don't try and go out there and boast things.
Well, I'm glad that you did. So again, in honor of Greg, swinging back to Greg, that's another nod to him. So I'm glad that you did mention that. That is cool. I will be, I actually went, the second you said the name, now I remember, it's kind of got an interesting font to the begonia on Netflix. Yep. So now I will be listening for that. I'll go, I know that guy. Well,
yeah. So it's I went and saw it in theaters and it was kind of weird, surreal hearing your voice. Like there's music playing, so it's harder to pick up, but it's right after, like you hear for the first like 30 seconds and it clips to something else and it comes back with him riding the bike again and you can really hear me talking.
That's awesome. You're like looking around like, yeah, that's me, everybody.
It was just me and my family. I think there's like 2 other people in there. So we went opening night on like a Wednesday and no one was in there.
Yeah, I'll have to watch that. The second you said, I'm like, oh, I remember that because I remember going, gosh, that's an interesting font.
Yeah, it's an interesting movie, to be honest. Like, I'm not just saying it just because they use my stuff in it. Like, it's a kind of funny, but also makes you think.
I'll have to check that out. Oh, that's very cool. Congrats on that, Brandon. And congrats on the doc. I enjoyed it. It's always nice to be transported as close as you can get without actually going there yourself and seeing these locations in the documentaries. That's why I also love to go and film with the guys at STM. You know, it's different to go there for yourself, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. For me, it's just in my backyard, so I don't really have to go anywhere.
Yeah. Which also can be a bad thing because you've also had your own experiences and you don't need to be, hey, look at me and light your own flame even higher because you've already had stuff at your own house too. So, you don't need any extra bits at the house. That makes it a little different.
Yeah. My youngest now, he has imaginary friends too. I was like, here we go again.
You're like, that sounds familiar. We call them imaginary friends, but they're not actually quite as imaginary as others might like to think. It's not a pretty little box.
Yeah, his friend is named Johnson, and he's 4 years old and has a mustache.
Oh.
I was like, that's nice.
Sounds like Johnson's bullshitting is what Johnson's doing.
Yeah, I told him that Johnson is not his friend.
That's right.
Yeah.
Johnson needs to take a hike. Johnson needs to not be messing with your kid is what needs to be happening, right?
Mm-hmm. So this happened after we spoke the last time, but I was doing an event and a lady came up, and it's creepy in a sense because I don't understand like the vibes that people get, but she claimed that she was a medium and something was telling her to tell me that there were 3 spirits in the house. One is of a little girl. She drowned not on the property, but down along the stream somewhere, which makes sense because obviously where I live, there's all sorts of stuff around here. So she just passes through. And that was the one that was being friendly with my daughter. And there's another one that's playful, but he's just on the ground itself. Like he's not harming anything. He's just here. But then there's one that's dark. And if we don't figure out, I'm trying to word it the exact way. If we don't figure it out before the boy turns 14, it'll be too late.
Oh, lovely.
I was like, well, I have a 13-year-old, so I have till next year to figure it out. Or my son, my youngest, he'll be 5. So I was like, I either got 9 years or I've got like less than a year. I was like, could you be any more vague?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, she comes up with this information, but then has no follow-up on how to be of help with that.
Yeah.
Or to be more specific.
Yeah, she walked away. She just wanted me to know that. That's what the spirit guides were telling her. And then she went off about her business, and I never seen her again. So,
your daughter was obviously there. Were your sons there too?
no.
Okay. And what do you mean she's being really friendly with your daughter?
This was an event that I was speaking at. So none of my kids were even there.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how she even knew I had a boy.
Oh, gosh. Well, I guess she's a psychic medium, but then again, you come with this very ominous message. Oh, you have till he's 14. Good luck. Well, really?
Yeah. So that's something that's been haunting me in the back of my mind is like, I've done everything I can to try and make things protected around here, but what are you supposed to do when someone randomly just comes around and gives you some sort of vague information? Do you believe it or just ignore it?
Right. Okay. Just hypothetical. And I know that you have your own podcast. It's not like she can't find you, but if she was watching right now, if she could see, would you say something to her? Like, get back in touch, or can you help me out any more than this, or anything?
If she is listening right now, and I've mentioned this on my show before, I think, I would like to know which kid you're talking about. If the spirits are telling you something, like, is it my soon-to-be 14-year-old or my youngest? Because 14-year-old's the 13-year-old's the one that goes out and helps me film this type of stuff. He enjoys it. My youngest one is now talking to a mustached 4-year-old. So I'm almost inclined to believe it's probably the younger one.
Right. So the 13-year-old, he hasn't been seeing anything. He hasn't really spoken much about that. Okay.
No. Him and my oldest are downstairs, and they don't ever talk about anything like that. The biggest thing that he's freaked out by is we have a wood burner, and it's down in the basement where their rooms are, and he keeps hearing noises in the wood burner. Well, the wood burner is notorious for trapping birds. They come through the chimney. So I opened it the other day, and a bird about flew into my face.
Yeah, that'll...
So that's the only thing that freaks him out. He's not afraid of ghosts or anything like that. I don't think he believes in any of it.
So what's Johnson's deal? What's he saying to your 4-year-old?
He has never said anything besides the fact that he's coming to his birthday party. Yeah. Johnson's coming to his birthday party. Johnson and him are playing, and I don't know. He doesn't get too specific about what him and Johnson are doing.
Right. Yeah, Johnson's full of shisa is what that is. That is immediately your mind just goes to a dark place with that. I mean, obviously, thinks as a kid with a mustache. I mean, no.
I giggled about it because I thought it was funny at first, but then the more I think about it, it's like, it's not really funny. It's pretty creepy. He hasn't mentioned him in the last couple of days, so we'll see. This is like a very recent thing.
Oh my gosh. Just a couple of days. It's only been a couple of days since he last mentioned him. Does he see Johnson in his bedroom?
He will randomly just start talking about his friend Johnson. And before he talked about his other house that he lived in, and he had other brothers and sisters. So we always just chalked it up to overactive imagination because he's a little kid. But now he's being specific with names again, and that's what my daughter had started being.
Right.
Because she had that one named Chloe. I was like, no. I was like, what is it with you kids? And creepy people. Like, when we lived in our other house, we never had any problems like this. So I still think it's because of the location of where we're at.
Yeah, what's the closest body of water to you again?
Well, if you go 2 miles south, there's the Wabash River, and if you go 2 miles north is the Eel River. We're right between both rivers.
Yeah.
So here's another interesting thing for the true crime people. I don't know if you're familiar with the Delphi murders.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 little girls that were murdered.
Yep, horrible.
They were right along the Deer Creek. But if you follow the river streams from here, the Eel River connects to the Wabash River and Logansport, which is where one of the guys had talked about seeing that orb in his house that was floating in the documentary. He was from over in that area. And then If you follow that down, it connects into the town of Delphi, which is the same area where the 2 little girls were murdered, right along that river. So if you follow these rivers, there have been so many murders along them.
Yeah.
Not just here. Like when I was digging for information, there was going to be a true crime part of my documentary, but I'd already had like 85 minutes, so I didn't even get into any of that. There have been so many murders along these rivers over the years. Like right from where they'd seen, like this one location had multiple dogman sightings. Just literally upstream, they found, this is, I think, in just a couple of years ago, they found a girl. And I don't know if she'd been murdered or she'd drowned or what, but they found her body along the river. She'd been missing. And then there's been murders all along the Mississinewa, obviously the Native Americans, but like even recent times, there's been murders along the river. Bodies get dumped in there. Even in the 1930s, the mafia from Chicago used to come down here. This is, again, I can't verify this because it's not like the mafia took any documentation of it, but that same general area where the 2 rivers meet, they used to have a building out there, and that's where they kind of stored some of their booze and stuff during Prohibition days. There was always talks about having like local gang fights between the mafia people, and they used to dump the bodies in the river. So again, what the rivers around here? And here I am right in the middle of them.
Yeah, that's probably not helping you, but it's not like any of us. It's not like you can just pack up and move at a whim and just, as a just in case, and plus you don't even know if that would rectify or fix anything. But Johnson sounds like a real a-hole, and I think you should leave your kid alone. I don't like hearing that at all, Brandon, and I hope you keep me in the loop with that one, because that's not, that creeps me the hell out. The second you said it, I'm like, oh God, that's dark. I don't want, that's not good.
Yeah. He's the same one that told us years ago, and I think I talked about it in the first episode, where he was seeing ghosts in the ceiling in our bedroom, and he kept saying ghosts when he could barely speak, and he was afraid of something. Yeah, now he's the one seeing Johnson, and of all names too, like my friend John, who helped film stuff, like his name's John. So I originally thought maybe he was just making it up because my friend John, he's saying Johnson. But then the mustache, he's 4 years old, he's got a mustache and everything. I was like, is he making this up, or is he literally seeing something that he thinks is his friend named Johnson?
Well, and considering you do a podcast very similar to mine, you know how these things work, and you wonder if the ghosts in the ceiling are one and the same as Johnson, that is supposed to be this child with a mustache interacting with your son. If it's just taken a different form, a form that he feels comfortable to interact with, not good.
Yeah. Which I do have video of this, and I could my wife would be mad if I sent it, but I could send it. Will be 2 years this coming October, I think, but we have a little remote control green goblin, and it's my son's. And when you press the button, it goes forward. You press the button, it goes backwards. I can't say this is paranormal, but again, when you see things and it responds to something you say, creeps you out. It was moving by itself. And I started recording it, and so did my older son. On my video, you can see the remote still laying on the ground, and it's moving by itself. On his, when he was recording it, he didn't think, because obviously not old enough to think about having to have the remote in there. But on his video, my wife comes in, and she gets mad at us for screwing around with the thing, saying like it's a ghost or whatever, because we don't acknowledge that type of stuff. So she says, if you want them to leave you alone, go backwards. And it goes backwards, and you hear her start screaming and cussing because it freaks her out. But it instantly responded to her and went backwards.
Yeah.
So I took the batteries out of it, and yeah. Like, I ain't messing with this stuff again. But we go weeks to months at a time with nothing weird happening, and then randomly stuff happens. Like, again, we'd been pretty fine up until here recently. Now Johnson shows up.
Yeah, Johnson's a turd. We already know that. That's a steel wolf in sheep's clothing is what it sounds like. Nothing friendly or nice about that. And I just worry because the last time that we talked, shortly after you had the things going on in your recording studio. So, I just,
all the flies.
yeah, just
Yeah.
all other weird things going on. So, I guess we'll see what happens. But Brandon, thank you so much for coming back on to share. It sounds like you have already enough to create a part 2 for Triangle Part 2 documentary.
I keep getting asked about that. And to be honest, I think what I'm going to do is focus on one specific spot and do like my own episode,
Mm-hmm.
like my own little mini doc of just that one specific episode. So like one at the battlegrounds, one at Okefenokee. I've got some other places that are around here too that didn't make the documentary that I'm going to hit up. There's a cemetery that everyone kept telling me I needed to go to, and I'm like, man, I think cemeteries are kind of cliche, but apparently when I was talking to some guy, he said a hellhound came after him. This was just a couple weeks ago when I was talking to him. He said years ago that he was over in the cemetery and a hellhound came after him. And I'm thinking like the hellhound stories that we hear out by the Indian burial grounds where these things chase you along the roads. This one was bipedal. So I said, it sounds like a dog man. He's like, no, it was a hellhound. I was like, oh, okay. So he was convinced of what he believes it to be. And then some other lady had talked about seeing stuff around there too. So within the last couple of weeks, someone has mentioned this cemetery. I was like, all right, well, I think it's worth looking into. So for anyone listening, you might start seeing stuff on the Tinfoil Tales Films page.
Very cool. Yeah, what an active area with all kinds of things. Bad people, bad possible curses and blood on the land and all of the usual suspects for basically your perfect recipe for paranormal activity. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Brandon. And again, guys, if you want to hear Brandon's retelling of that Dogman, for lack of a better term, that he saw, that was episode 451. And don't forget to find him on Tinfoil Tales Podcast, wherever you find your podcast. And Brandon, I'm crossing my fingers that Johnson buzzes off, but I would like to be kept in the loop as to what's going on there.
Definitely. I don't think we're going to hear much from Johnson here after this week. I'm planning on doing another one of my little cleansings.
Good.
We'll see if we get rid of Johnson.
Good. Yeah, he needs to. Bye, boy. See ya. Start messing with the kids. That's something different. Mama bears and Papa bears don't like that sort of thing. So.
Yeah.
All right, Brandon. Until next time.